Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Church. I'm the head coach at York University, and I coach the women's ice hockey program there. I'm happy to be with you today for the Hockey Minds conference and presenting today virtually. I'm in Milton, Ontario, and I've been proud to coach at York University for 16 seasons, going into my 17th season. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about culture and leadership and what I've learned through my 23 years of coaching at various levels, from the university level where I've spent most of my time all the way up to the national team level. And I think, I hope that there's a few things that you'll take and can apply to whatever level you're coaching, whether that's grassroots or pro hockey. I think a lot of these things will apply. So talking about culture and leadership, I always like to start with storytelling. And for me, this is one of my favorite stories about culture. So you have a traveler traveling down the road, and he comes across three individuals doing the exact same job. They're spread out by about 20 feet. And the traveler goes to the first person and asks them what they're doing. And they reply that I'm laying bricks, which is exactly what they were doing. They were laying bricks and mortar and building up level on level. The traveler goes to the second person who's about 20 feet away doing the exact same job and asks them, what are you doing? And the worker says, I'm building a wall. So they had a little bit broader vision of what they were doing. They were building something as opposed to just laying bricks. And then the traveler proceeded to go to the third worker who is 20 feet away doing the exact same job and asks, what are you doing? And that person said, I'm building a cathedral that's going to service tens of thousands of people for the next millennium. And this is a picture of the dome in Cologne, Germany. And I've been fortunate enough to visit this great cathedral. And I've climbed to the top of that spire that you can see in the background. And what I like about this photo is that you can see this magnificent piece of architecture, which has stood from the mid-13th century. But if you look to the right-hand side of the picture, you can also see that there's scaffolding there and they're refurbishing. And actually, they're still building parts of this cathedral to the original plan. So it's been under construction for almost 1,000 years. And I like this analogy because, if you're looking at culture is about building something that will last beyond the people that are building it. So all three workers, the bricklayer, the wall builder, and the cathedral builder, most likely they weren't going to see the completion of this project. The other part that I like is deciding which person you want to be and which person you want to be on your team. So do you want to have a bricklayer that just shows up and punches in and punches out? They don't really add a lot of value to your culture, to your team. Do you want a wall builder, someone who has a bit of vision, but they're not maybe as fully invested? Or do you want cathedral builder, someone who sees something beyond what they're doing in the moment and is building something that's going to last for generations? And for me at York University, we want cathedral builders. We want people that are invested, that want to lay foundation and build levels and leave something that's going to last and have a lasting legacy and impact on the people beyond just the time that they're spending with our team. And so cathedral builders for me are leaders. They have a growth mindset. They have their priorities are right in terms of being a university student athlete, that their academics come first, then athletics, then involvement in the community, and then the social aspect of being on the team. They're resilient and they're all in. This is a great chart from Jeff Jansen, who does a lot of work on team culture in especially college level sport, but looks at all levels of sport. And what I like about this graph is it shows the combination for culture between results and relationships, that you have to have both parts. But you can have greater emphasis on one than the other. You can have great emphasis on both, or you can have no emphasis on either. And he spells out here in this diagram, if you have a low emphasis on the results, the way that you do things, on winning, if you have a low emphasis on that, plus a low emphasis on the relationships, the interpersonal relationships between coaches, staff, and team, that you're in a corrosive culture. And if you have a high emphasis on results, so you're just focused on winning, but you have a low emphasis on the relationships of the people within your culture, it's cutthroat. And so pro sport often lives here because there's such an emphasis on winning. But when it comes to championship culture, at the top right of this diagram, there's a high emphasis placed on results, which is how you do things. So winning, but also the daily habits of how you do your work. And there's a high emphasis on people and the relationships between those people. And ideally, I think that's where we all aspire to have our programs live, is in that top right quadrant, with a high emphasis on how we do things, the winning aspects and habits, and then a high emphasis on the relationships between the people. For us, we focus our culture around this concept of wanu. In the Maori language, the indigenous people of New Zealand, it's pronounced whānau. And it's often translated as family, but it has a much more complex meaning. It's not just your immediate family or your extended family. It really means your community. It means your connection to ancestry and the spirit world. And I think that my team latched onto this word because it was really important that they have this strong connection and cohesion, not just within the team, within the existing season, but going back to the women who laid the foundation for our program in the late 1960s, and that they want to have a lasting impact moving forward as well. And so the Maori people, have a lot of wisdom, and, they realized they have this saying, they have geese like we have here in Canada, and they fly in that chevron formation. And when people come into a team, they have competing demands and competing interests, and some, are really focused on moving to the next level, getting a pro contract, or they just want to wear the jacket and be part of the team and are more socially motivated. And the Maori have a saying that you have to follow the spearhead. So like that goose at the tip of the chevron, the reason that goose is there is it breaks the wind for the geese behind it. And by doing that and trading off who takes the lead, they can actually travel about 30 or 35% farther. And the other aspect of that is it's a lot more efficient for the group, but they're pointed in the same direction. So they're following the tip of the spear, they're following the spearhead, and they can fly in formation. And I think that that's a really wise thing. And it's really the goal of all coaching and all culture, is to point people in the same direction towards a common goal. And something that they want to leave behind. The other thing that the Maori people say is that you have to be a good ancestor. I love the photo on the right here of one of my senior players kind of talking with a more junior player, and trying to get on the same page and get better together. But being a good ancestor is really about planting trees that you're never going to see. Again, much like the cathedral builder, you have a vision which you may not see fully completed during the time that you spend within the organization. And in order to plant trees that you're never going to see, you have to focus on strong roots as opposed to the fruit. So what are the roots? The roots are the culture, your character, the morals, the compete, the leadership, toughness, and team cohesion that you have. And the fruit are the wins. So not just wins as in, win-loss and having more goals at the end of the game, but creating leaders of the future in my program, or what we call Great York Lions. So while we have this established culture, we also have to have an eye on the environment that we create. So I've often in the past used the cathedral analogy and the analogy of an aquarium interchangeably, but now I really see the difference here. Culture is that long-term goal, whereas environment is the short-term. You're trying to create a living, breathing mechanism in which the right things can occur. And so just like this aquarium, you have to be mindful of everything that you put into it. The plant life, whether it's real plants or fake plants, the kind of fish species that you put in. You don't want fish that are going to outcompete one another, or you're not going to have this beautiful aquarium. And you have to put oxygen in. It's a living, breathing entity, an environment, and it's a very complex system, and it takes constant care and attention, or else this pain that we're looking through is going to be very murky. That would be that corrosive culture that Jeff Jansen talks about. And so, you know, we have to have the long game, which is our overall culture, building that cathedral, but we also have to have the short game, which is the environment that we're creating on a day-to-day basis that's clear and everybody understands what's being put in and also what we need to take out. So I think, you know, I love this photo here because for me, one of my primary goals is to have smiling faces and to have people who feel really good about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and then how they leave the program, that they're feeling like they've maximized their time and potential within our program. And so creating the right environment to have the smiling faces is about having fun, working hard and smart, and, you know, building relationships and having great foundational habits both on and off the ice, having respect for one another, and modeling the behaviors that you want to see every day, and practicing and playing with those ideals in mind. So my team set a goal for themselves to be the hardest working and highest achieving team at our university, within our conference, and in the country, which is lofty. But really this vision, you know, in our last season, you know, pre-COVID, we really lived into our potential in all these areas, both on and off the ice. And I'm going to speak to, you know, why I think that happened. But, you know, for us, it's not just about being a competitive hockey program. We certainly want to be one. We want to win championships. Like everybody starts out the season, you know, you have an eye on winning a championship, but it's about how you get to that championship, which I think is more important, and what my job is, preparing these young women to be great leaders themselves in the future. And so that also involves how we do academically. And, you know, I'm really proud of the fact that, you know, half of my team are academical Canadians, meaning that they have an A average. My goal as a coach is to make sure that they graduate with a degree of their choice, and that they move on into a career that they're going to feel rewarded with and find fulfilling. We also have to give back to our community. It's really, really important, you know, for our university, but for our team as well, that we're entrenched in our university community, but also the surrounding community, and that we're giving back in positive ways, and we're, again, modeling the things that we want to see within our community. Part of the environment is adversity. And I love this image here of the Greek myth of Sisyphus constantly pushing the rock up the hill, up the mountain. And I think sometimes as athletes and as coaches, we lose sight on the fact that adversity will make us stronger, but also that the daily grind, and we've had a lot of grinding in this COVID year, but that grind is really what we love to do. We love the challenge. If Sisyphus ever got the rock to the top of the mountain, or as if any great performer achieves a goal, they push the rock right back down to the bottom again, and they start pushing, because the joy is in that pushing. And it's not in kind of sitting at the top and going, okay, well, I've done that now. It's about, well, what can I do to get better, and how am I going to find that new challenge? And so I think for us, we have to know that adversity is a must in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And success is not a straight line. I have this image on my whiteboard at school to remind me that, you know, getting to that, you know, far right-hand side of the graph is not easy, that you're going to go through peaks and valleys within a season, maybe within a week, certainly over a number of years. You're not going to be always at your peak, and that there's this cycle of growth and renewal. And there are going to be obstacles that we're going to face from year to year, from month to month, week to week. There's certainly going to be doubters. There's going to be mistakes, and there's going to be setbacks. But if we work hard, you can continue to, and you stay focused on what you're there to do, you can progress towards success. And what I love is in the parentheses that it says, this chart is not to scale. Sometimes that downward slope is going to last longer than you'd like it to be. And sometimes that upward trajectory is going to be shorter than you would like it to be. But I think it's really about staying focused on the controllables and working hard on a day-to-day basis. So I think as a coach, you know, when I think of why I lead, I think it's really important, and as I get into the next part of leadership, understanding why I want to lead. and why I got into this in the first place. At first, you know, to be quite honest, it was really just a way to extend the competitiveness of sport. My playing career had ended. I wasn't going to get that competition anymore. And coaching was a way to extend that. You know, it was certainly different, but it was a way for me to continue to stay in the arena. And now that competitive fire and drive is still there, certainly, but I realize now it's a lot more about the relationships that I build with my team and with my players, and helping them achieve their goals and becoming better people coming out of their university experience, not just better hockey players. So that's really important to me. So I've gone back to school here in my late 40s, doing a master's of sports psychology at York University. And the reason I went back was I wanted to be a better coach. And there were no other reasons to do it other than personal reasons for me. It wasn't about a different job or a different career. It was that I really wanted to find a way to be a better coach. And so I'm focusing on leadership within sports psychology and its impact on positive youth development. And over the years, you know, there's been this evolution. I hope there's been an evolution of coach from the authoritarian coach really yelling and screaming and intimidating to a more directive coach, kind of, this is where you need to go, to a more supportive coach, and I think finally to a very collaborative coach style. And so gone are the days where there's this unidirectional leadership from the club to the coach to the athlete and team. And what we're seeing is this morphing into a more multi-directional leadership style between club, coach, athlete, and team, where there's this collaboration on a day-to-day basis. And so, you know, within sports psychology, there's been lots of studying on the coach as the leader, and there's been a lot of study on the captain as the leader. And if you've read books like The Captain Class, it would suggest that, you know, captains are the be-all and end-all. You need a transformational and generational leader to achieve greatness. But my question after reading that book by Sam Walker was, what if you don't have that? Should you just, you know, throw in your chips and you're done? How do you build a solid leadership group? And what the literature in sports psychology is showing is that, you know, this study that was done in Europe with almost 5,000 coaches and athletes, only 1% of the teams identified the captain as the best leader across these 4 leadership roles, which I'll talk about in a second. And, you know, why is that? You know, really, and I think it's because often captains are selected because of attributes that are not directly related to leadership. It's underpinned by things like nepotism, non-leadership factors like their ability to play the game at a high level, or the fact that they fit with the personality of the coach. And those aren't necessarily the reasons that you should pick a captain. Certainly compatibility between coach and leadership is important, but the best player isn't always the best leader. The first line center isn't always the best leader. Sometimes it's your fourth line winger. Sometimes it's your goalie. So I think we need to change our perception within hockey about what makes a great captain and what great leadership looks like. And so one of the definitions that I have come across in my academic life that I really love is this idea of an athlete occupying, athlete leadership is an athlete occupying a formal or informal role within the team, who influences the group of team members to achieve a common goal. And I think a lot of times we only think about formal leadership as being the important roles. The coach is the formal leader, the captain is a formal leader, or assistant captains. But what the research has shown in many, many sports, including hockey, is that informal leaders are sometimes more important and often more important than the formal leaders because they can help transmit the messages from those leaders. So within the literature, there's these fourfold athlete leadership categories. There's task leader, motivational leader, social leader, external leader. And they're divided into on-field and off-field, or in hockey, on-ice and off-ice roles. Task leader is someone who keeps the team focused on the tactical goals of the game. The motivational leader is someone who steers the emotions while on the ice. A social leader is someone who promotes good relations off of the ice, and that good idea of a good team environment and atmosphere. And external leaders are kind of the link between the external factors like media or sponsors and the team or organization. And what's been shown is that teams that have high quality athlete leadership, they're characterized by high levels of confidence and strong task and social cohesion. So if you have good leadership, you're going to have better task and social cohesion. And this idea of shared leadership is becoming more and more popular. So the idea of informal and formal leaders and coaches and clubs sharing different parts of leadership, and that it leads to higher confidence, higher identification with the team, and better ranking, that you perform better in terms of wins and losses than a single team captain model. And so this is a diagram from a study done on rugby, and this is social network analysis. So they looked at all the interrelationships between the players on a team. And here you can see the bigger the node, the more influence that player has. But all those bridges and connections, those arrows, are the connections between players. And so you can see, player 25, player 20, and player 5 have, important role within this team, whether they're formal or informal leaders, I don't know. But I can see that a lot of people view them as leaders within this group. And I think the goal for us as coaches, and the goal for all leaders, whether that's your captains and coaches, for someone like player number 10, who's out here on islands, they don't have influence over anybody and they're not influenced by anybody. Our goal as leaders is to try and pull them into the fold so that they can be great contributors to our team. And that's a great challenge. A great challenge is to know where the influence lies, and then to have influence to help lead them towards that common goal. And so the All Blacks, rugby culture, and this is a great image of the haka, they came up with this idea of dual management, where coaches and athletes collaborate across almost every aspect of sport, to pour back into the tactical viewpoint of the team, planning practices, the leadership, how they do everything. And there's a great book called Legacy, which is becoming quite popular in hockey circles. But if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. It's a great book by James Kerr, Legacy, about the All Blacks culture. And this is a great, the haka, the dance that they do before a match. A lot of people think it's about intimidation, that it's just this war dance, but really it's a connection to mana, which is their connection to the land and to the spirits and to the ancestry. And they've actually changed how they do the haka now. They actually perform it in that tip of the spearhead formation now, because it had a lot of meaning for the All Blacks and their connection to Mallory culture. But this idea of dual management is shared leadership, is that there's no one single leader that can lead them to success, that they need all people to be involved in the leadership of the team. And the All Blacks are arguably the most successful sport organization over the last 100 years. So we had a successful season in 2019-20. And I think, we had the previous seasons, we had been kind of eking up the table, but not breaking through. And, our league is very tough from top to bottom. But we were getting better. All the analytics that I look at, all the statistics, we were getting better season over season, but we just weren't getting the wins that we needed to push ourselves into that playoff picture. And then all of a sudden, everything clicked. And I think back to, well, why did it click? And why did we get to an OUA championship game? Unfortunately, we lost. Why did we qualify for a national championship for the first time in program history? And when I reflect back, I think of a couple of different things. Number one, we had great leadership. I've focused a lot on recruiting cathedral builders and great leaders. And we've worked a lot on developing those leaders, developing their leadership skills in combination with developing my own leadership skills. We had a mature, skilled team that created a really positive and cohesive environment. We were fitter and stronger than we ever had been before. So that makes things a lot easier on a day-to-day basis as well. And we learn from adversity. I often say win or learn. But that, that year, that season, 2019-20, it was the first time, in my coaching career, maybe the second time other than coaching the national team, where if we didn't win and we made mistakes, we were able to impart those lessons immediately into the next opportunity, whether that was a game or a practice. And I think that relates back to the fact that we had a great leadership and we had a positive team environment with matured student athletes. And the other thing was we believed in ourselves. We had this expectation that we were going to go into the game and that we were going to win if we did things the right way. And that led us to the national championships, as I said, for the first time in our program history. Unfortunately, COVID cut the tournament short, so we never got to play a game, and which is disappointing because I really felt we had a good chance to compete for the national championship. Even though we didn't win the OUA championship, we played really well in the final game, and we were really peaking going into that weekend, and we were all set to play on the Friday, and Thursday night was when hockey ended. And it was really hard and devastating, but the bright side of things are there's very few coaches that can say they're undefeated at a national championship. There's very few programs that can say that. So right now, we're one of those few programs. We're undefeated at the national championships. Looking forward to playing our first game at some point in the future. So if I had advice for you, it's invest in leadership and build a leaderful team, a team full of leaders. Tend to your culture like a garden, like the aquarium. Make sure you're pulling the weeds, nourishing the seeds, you're planting those trees that you're not going to see, being a good ancestor. Continue to work on yourself and develop yourself as a coach, develop yourself as a leader. It's not just about the X's and O's. In fact, very little is about the X's and O's, even though I'm sure you're going to learn lots of great things about X's and O's. And be patient. We've learned a lot about patience through COVID. Randy Posh, who wrote the last lecture, I love this. Experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. Sometimes when you lose, you need that experience to propel you to the next level. I know when I was at U of T as an assistant coach, we had a devastating loss in the national championships. And then the next year we went 35-0 and won a national championship. And I think we really needed that. We needed that losing experience to help us win. My dad said right before he passed away, and I thought it was very cryptic at the time, but even when it's not okay, it's still going to be okay. It seemed like it wasn't going to be okay going through COVID, and here we are with lots of optimism heading into the fall. Things are going to be different, but even when it's not okay, it will still be okay. And if you can't win, make sure that you learn. I think really important. And, life, coaching, leadership, team sport, it's a winding road. I think the awareness is really, really important, that we become self-aware. It really helps us lead better and coach better and build better relationships, which will lead to better results down the road. And for me, I love this image of the lions walking down the path together. This is a Rudyard Kipling quote from the Jungle Book, which is about wolves there, but I think it applies to lions as well. The strength of the pride is the lion, and the strength of the lion is the pride. If you have strong individuals, and you have a good environment and good culture, then you're going to have a really strong collective and a cohesive team. So I want to thank you for listening to me for the last little bit, and I hope there were a couple things that you can take and implement within your team. If I can be of assistance in your hockey journey in any way, please reach out to me. My email's there. You can do a quick Google search as well and find me. And it's been a pleasure presenting to you and the Hockey Minds podcast and the Hockey Minds conference here. And I look forward to meeting you in the rink at some point in the near future.